Alright folks, so this is possibly a new ongoing format here. We're going to be doing a new type of feature here, terms defined. So this is the pilot episode of Terms Defined, and we're going to talk about the Sharticle. So the Sharticle. So there are really two definitions to the noun Sharticle. And just a quick aside, I brought the glasses back. They're a little bit small on me, and they caused me to injure myself and stop wearing all sunglasses for a solid week. But I've brought them back because of the effect. And let me get out of Lake Vostok here for a second. Try to, there we go. Yes. All right, that's better. And we're actually using a double microphone setup. We're coming up from the illuminated mic as well as the toilet paper microphone. Anyway, skid marks come in various varieties, and sometimes skid marks are created by the shart. And I'm sure everybody knows what a shart is by now. I'm not even going to define that, as if you're viewing this video, you must have the internet. So cheers. So, different categories as reported by howtobeadad.com include the smudge, the shart, the dark mark, and this one, it's a toss-up whether you should toss it or wash it. Then you've got the wiper, and don't be a tosser. Do not be a tosser. And toss it when you need to toss it. I mean, stuff happens. So, and we're going to have to actually use foul language. So if you don't want to hear any vulgar terminology that is not necessarily FCC primetime friendly, the cursing could start at any moment. Anyway, so the first definition of a Sharticle is, the physical particles associated with skid marks. So keep calm and don't shart. And it's you-know-what time. Now, so a Sharticle, now this is a vulgar term. It may be considered a vulgar term. And sometimes you have to make up terms because this is how life works. If there's a new term because of some sort of new phenomenon in the universe, right? Sometimes you have to make up a term because there might not be a term. So let's get into alternate definitions. So definition number one, and keep in mind, again, this may be FCC unfriendly. So in any case, Sharticle, a noun, often considered vulgar, the particulate matter expelled from the anus due to a shart. Number two, a shitty article, often propaganda. So to use these both in sentences, look at these Sharticles in my drawers. Skid marks. Another example, phys.org's Earth section is rife with Sharticles like this one, about how it's CO2 is really spooky. Oh no, not the CO2. Oh, it's so scary. CO2 is so scary, folks. I'll just leave this on the screen while I talk about how scary CO2 is real quick. It's essential to basically all life on Earth, except for a bunch of extremophiles that live in places like ocean rift vents. Otherwise, things like algae support things like plankton, support things like everything else, and photosynthesis is, kind of important. So, please stop referring to CO2 as a pollutant, because CO2 is not a pollutant. And anyway, the point is, there are lots of Sharticles. Whether you're out there reading Sharticles about COVID-19, the mortality rate, how scary it is, how spooky it is, a comet tail's going to murder you today, all of these things are very likely to not kill you, statistically speaking. So, and so not only is, by the way, CO2 was at 7,000 back here. And, you can see there's no correlation between temperature and CO2 on the long scale, 600 million year scale. So, for goodness sakes, have some discernment if you head to phys.org and look at the Earth section. I'm not even going to get started talking about space, but let's just say there are plenty of Sharticles about space also, because in a lot of aspects of science, folks, you have to look at what you're measuring. And if you're looking at data from a computer model that is completely incorrect as how various inputs affect things like the climate, then you may be printing a Sharticle if you talk about some model that does things like, oh, I don't know, claim COVID-19 is really deadly. Or what about claim CO2 is a pollutant? By the way, CO2, once it gets down to like 300 parts per million, plants stop growing. So CO2 is actually at very low levels right now. As you can see way down here in the right-hand corner, there's your current CO2 levels at 4,000. I mean, at around 400 parts per million. So back here, we're at 7,000 parts per million. And nowadays we're at 417 parts per million or something like that. I don't know. Please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but the point remains that CO2 is not dangerous. It is not dangerous in your house. And let's talk about solutions to the problem that this particular Sharticle is referring to. Because it's the dumbest thing I ever heard in my life. Anyway, the article's claiming that if you have CO2 levels at 1,400 parts per million, by the way, it's much higher than that in most people's houses, you may experience some kind of cognitive decline, or disability as a result of the CO2. Actually, what will happen is your plants will grow really well. Now, we here, especially when it's ultra cold out, we do like air changes, right? It's good to change the air in the house to oxygenate it. And keep in mind, in very cold temperatures, there's actually more oxygen in the air because the air itself is thicker. So please sign up for phys.org's newsletter. Tell them to send you only Earth section articles. Anyway, CO2 is not a pollutant, and even if it was, it would have nothing to do with climate change. So, some interesting studies here, by the way, that we're going to talk about later, about galaxies' water worlds. And look, it's diamond anvils. Yes. So anyway, thanks for tuning in to Terms Defined, the Sharticle's pilot episode. Please keep calm and don't shart. And we'll be coming at you with more terms defined from behind the illuminated toilet paper microphone color changing area from Lake Vostok.